Chapter 2 Biological Classifications. Since the dawn of the civilization, there have been many attempts to classify living organisms. It was done instinctively, not using criteria that were scientific but born out of a need to use organisms for our own use, for food, shelter, and clothing. Aristotle was the earliest to attempt a more scientific basis for classification. He used a simple morphological character to classify plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. He also divided animals into two groups, those which had red bloods and those that did not. The lineage time a two kingdom system of classification with plant and animalia. Kingdom was developed that include all plants and animals respectively. These systems did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes, unicellular and multicellular organisms and photosynthetic green algae and non-photosynthetic fungi organism. Classification of organisms into plants and animals was earlier done and was easy to understand, but a large number of organisms did not fall into either category. Hence, the two kingdom classification used for a long time was found inadequate. Besides a gross morphology, a need was also felt for including other characteristics like cell structure, nature of wall, mode of nutrients, habitat, method of reproduction, evolutionary relationship, etc. Classification systems for the living organisms have hence undergone several changes over the time. The plant and animal kingdoms have been a constant under the different systems. The understanding of what groups organisms be includes under these kingdoms have been changing. The number and nature of the kingdoms have also been understood differently by different scientists over the time. R. H. Whitaker, 1969, proposed a five kingdom classification. The kingdom defined by him were named Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, Animalia. The main criteria for classification used by him include cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationship. Gives a comparative account of different characteristics of the five kingdoms. The three domain systems has also been proposed that divides the kingdom Monera into two domains, leaving the remaining Eukaryote kingdom in the third domain, and there a six kingdom classification. You will learn about this system in details in higher classes. Let us look at this five kingdom classification to understand the issue and consideration that influence the classification systems. Earlier classification system influenced bacteria, algae, fungi, mosaicisms, gymnosperms, and angiosperms under plants. The characters that unified this whole kingdom was that all the organisms included had a cell wall in their cells. This placed together groups which widely different in other characteristics and brought together the prokaryotes, bacteria, and the blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, with other groups which were eukaryotes. It also grouped together the unicellular organisms and multicellular ones. Say, for example, Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra were placed together under algae. The classification did not differentiate between the heterotrophic group fungi and the autotrophic green plants, though they also showed a characteristic differences in their wall compositions. The fungi and chitin in their wall, while the green plants had a cellulose cell wall. When such characteristics were considered, the fungi were placed in a separate kingdom, kingdom fungi. All prokaryote organisms were grouped together under kingdom Monera, and the unicellular eukaryote organisms were placed in the kingdom Protista. Kingdom Protista is brought together Chlamydomonas, chlorella, earlier placed in the algae within plants and both having cell walls, with paramoeciums and amoeba, which were earlier placed in the animal kingdom while lack of cell wall. It has put together organisms which its early classifiers were placed in a different kingdom. This happens because the criteria for classification changed. The These kinds of class changes will take place in future to depending to on the improvements in our understanding of characteristics and involve evolutionary relationships. Over time, an attempt has been made to evolve a classification system which relates not only the morphological, physiological, and reproductive similarities, but it is also physiogenetic, that is based on evolutionary relationships. In these chapters, we will study characteristics of kingdom Monera, Protista, and fungi of the Whitaker systems of classification. The kingdom Plantae and Animalia, commonly referred to as plant and animal kingdom respectively, while will be dealt separately in chapter 3 and 4.
Kingdom Monera. Bacteria are the sole members of Kingdom Monera. They are the most abundant microorganisms. Bacteria occurs almost everywhere. Hundreds of bacteria are present in handful of soil. They also live in extreme habitats such as hot springs, deserts, snow, and deep oceans where very few other life forms can survive. Many of them live in or on other organisms as parasites. Bacteria are grouped under four categories based on their shape: the spherical coccus, cocci, the rod-shaped bacillus, phylum Bacilli, the comma-shaped vibrio, and the spherical spirillum. Through the bacterial structures is very simple. They are very complex in behavior compared to many other organisms. Bacteria as a group show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Some of the bacteria are heterotrophic, that they synthesize their own food from inorganic substance. They may be photosynthetic autotrophic or chemosynthetic autotrophic. The vast majority of bacteria are heterotrophs, that is, they depend on other organisms or on dead organisms, matter or food. Archaebacteria. These bacteria are special since they live in some of the most harsh habitats, such as extreme salty areas, halophiles, hot springs, thermoacidophiles, and marshy areas. Methanogen. Archaebacteria differ from other bacteria in having a different cell wall structures, and these features is responsible for their survival in extreme conditions. Methanogens are present in the gut of several ruminant animals such as cows and buffaloes, and they are responsible for the production of methane biogas from the dung of the animal. Eubacteria. There are thousands of different eubacteria or true bacteria. They are characterized by the presence of a rigid cell wall, and if motile, a flagellum, the cyanobacteria, also referred to a blue-green algae, have chlorophyll A similar to green plant and are photosynthetic autotrophs. The cyanobacterial are unicellular, colonial or filamentous, freshwater, marine or terrestrial algae. The colonies are generally surrounded by gelatinous sheet. They often bloom in polluted water bodies. Some of these organisms can fix autotrophic nitrogen in specialized cells called heterocytes. Example: Nostocs and Anabaena. Chemosynthetic heterotrophic bacteria oxidize various inorganic substances such as nitrate, nitrites, and ammonia and use the released energy for their ATP production. They play a great role in recycling nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Heterotrophic bacteria are almost abundant in nature. The majority are important decomposers. Many of them have significant impact on human affairs. They are helpful in making curd for milk productions of antibodies, fixing nitrogen in legume roots, etc. Some are pathogens causing damage of human beings, crops from farms, animals, and pets. Chlorella, typhoid, tetanus, citrus, canker are well-known diseases caused by different bacteria. Bacteria reproduce mainly by fusion. Sometimes, under unfavorable conditions, they produce a spore. They also reproduce by a sort of sexual reproduction by adopting a primitive type of DNA transfer from one bacteria to another. The mycoplasm are organisms that living cells known and can survive without oxygen. Many mycoplasms are pathogenic in animals and plants. Kingdom Protista. A single-celled eukaryote are placed under protist, but the boundaries of this kingdom are not well defined. What may be a photosynthetic protista to be a biologist may be a plant to another. In this book, we include cryptophyte, dinoflagellate, euglonoids, slime modes, and protozoan under protista. Members of protista are primary aquatic. The kingdom from a link with the other dealing with plants, animals, and fungi, being eukaryotes. The protist cell body contains a well-defined nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Some have flagella or cilia. Protists reproduce asexually and sexually by a process involving cell fusion and zygote formation. Trousophiles. This group includes diatoms and golden algae. They are found in freshwater as well as in marine environment. They are microscopic and flat passively in water currents. Plankton. Most of them are photosynthetic. In diatoms, the cell walls form two thin overlapping cells which fit together as in a soap box. The walls are embedded with silica and thus the walls are indestructible. Thus diatoms have left behind large amount of cell wall deposits in their habitat. This accumulation over billions of years is referred to as the diatomeous earth. Being gritty, this soil is used in polishing, filtrations of oils and syrup. Diatoms are the chief products in the ocean. Dinoflagellate. These organisms are mostly marine and photosynthetic. They appear yellow, green, brown, blue, or red depending on the main pigment present in their cells. The cell wall has stiff cellulose planted on the outer surface. Most of them have two flagella. One lies longitudinal and the other transversely in a furrow between the wall plates. Very often, red dinoflagellate, example gonalax, undergo such rapid multiplication that they make the sea appear red. Red tides, toxins released by such large numbers, may even kill other marine animals such as fishes. Euglenoid. Majority of these fresh water organisms found in the stagnant water. Instead of a cell wall, they have a protein-rich layer called pellicle, which makes their body flexible. They have two flagella, a short and a long one. Through they are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight. When deprived of sunlight, they behave like heterotrophs by predating on other smaller organisms. Interestingly, the pigments of euglenites are identical to those present in higher plants. Example Euglena. Slime modes. Slime modes are saprophytic protists. The body moves along decaying twigs and leaves, engulfing organic material. Under suitable conditions, they form an aggregation called plasmodium, which may grow and spread over several feet. During unfavorable conditions, the plasmodium differentiates and forms fruiting bodies bearing spore at their tips. The spores possess two walls. They are extremely resistant and survive for many years, even under adverse conditions. The spores are spread by air current. Protozoan. All protozoans are heterotrophs and live as predator or parasites. They are believed to be primitive relatives of animals. There are four major groups of protozoans. Amoeboid protozoans. These organisms live in fresh water, seawater, or moist soil. They move and catch their prey by putting out pseudopodia, as in amoeba. Marine forms have silica shells on their surface. Some of them, such as Entamoeba, are parasites. Flagellated protozoan. The members of this group are either free-living or parasitic. They have flagella. The parasitic forms causes diseases such as sleeping sickness, example trypanosoma. Ciliated protozoans. These are aquatic, actively moving organisms. Because of the presence of thousands of cilia, they have a cavity, gullet, that open to the outside of the cell surface. The coordinated movement of rows of cilia causes the water landed with food to be steered into the gullet. Example paramecium. Sporozoans. These include diverse organisms that have an infectious spore-like stage in their life cycle. The most notorious in Plasmodium malarian parasites, which causes malaria, a disease which has staggering effects on human population. Kingdom fungi. The fungi consist a unique kingdom of heterophilic organisms. They show great diversity in morphology and habitat. You must have seen fungi on a moist bread and rotten fruits. The common mushrooms you eat and toadstool are also fungi. White spots on a mustard leaves are due to a parasitic fungi. Some unicellular fungi, example yeast, are used to make bread and beer. Other fungi cause diseases in plants and animals. Vitreous rushing Puccinia is an important example. Some are the source of antibiotics, example penicillium. Fungi are cosmopolitan and occur in air, water, soil, and on animals and plants. They prefer to grow in warm and humid places. Have you ever wondered why we keep food in a fridge? Yes, it is to prevent food from going bad due to bacterial or fungal infection. With the exception of yeast, which are unicellular, fungi are filamentous. Their bodies consist of long, cylinder thread-like structures or continuous tube filled with multinucleated cytoplasm. These are called colonocytic hyphae. Others have septae or cross wall in their hyphae. The cell walls of fungi are composed of chitin and polysaccharides. Most fungi are heterotrophic and absorb soluble organic matter from dead substances and hence are called saprophyte. Those that depend on living plants and animals are called parasites. They can also live as symbiont in association with algae and lichen and with roots of higher plants and mycorrhiza. Reproduction in fungi can take place by vegetative means. Fragmentation, fission, and budding. Asexual reproduction is by pores, called conidia or sporangiospore or zoospore, and the sexual reproduction is by oospores, ascospore, and basidospore. The various spores are produced in distinct structures called fruiting bodies. The sexual cycles involve the following three steps: fusion of protoplasm between two motile or non-motile gametes called plasmogamy, fusion of two nuclei called karyogamy, meiosis in zygote resulting in haploid spores. When a fungus reproduces sexually, two haploid hyphae of compatible mating types come together and fuse. In some fungi, the fusion of two haploid cells immediately resulting in diploid cells. However, in other fungi, Ascomycetes and Basidomycetes, as intervening dikaryotic stage n plus n, that is 2 nucleic per cell, occurs. Such a condition is called dikaryon, and the phase is called dikaryophase or fungus. Later, the parental nuclei fuse and the cells become diploid. The fungiform fruit's body in which reductions divisions occurs, leading to formation of haploid spores. The morphology of the mycelium, mode of spore formations and fruiting bodies from the basis for the division of the kingdom into various classes. Phycomycetes. Members of Phycomycetes are found in aquatic habitats and on decaying wood in moist and damp places or as obligated parasites on plants. The mycelium is accepted and coinocytes, asexual reproduction takes place by zoospore or by aplanospore. These spores are endogenously produced in saprogenium. A zygospore is formed by fusion of two gametes. These gametes are similar in morphology, isogamous, or dissimilar, asynchronous or ogamous. Some common examples are mucorrhizums, the bread mount maintained earlier, and albus, the parasite fungi on Ascomycetes, commonly known as sac fungi. The associated they, the associates are mostly multicellular. Example penicillium or rarely unicellular. Example is saprophytes. They are saprophytic decomposers, parasites or coprolites growing on dung. Mycelium is branched and septate. The sexual spores are conidia produced exogenously on the special mycelium called con- conidiophores. Conidia on germination produce mycelium. Sexual spores are called ascospores, which are produced endogenously in sac like asci, singular ascus. These asci are arranged in different types of fruiting bodies called ascops. Some examples are Aspergillus, claviceps, and Neurospora. Neurospora is used extensively in biological and genetic work. Many members like moths and truffles are edibles and are considered delicious. Commonly known from Commonly known forms of basidomycetes are mushrooms, bracket fungi, or puffballs. They grow in soil, on lawns and tree stumps, and in living plant bodies as parasite. Example rust and smooth. The mycelium is branched and septate. Disexual spores are generally not found, but vegetative reproduction by fragmentation is common. The sex organs are absent, but plasmogamy is brought about by fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes. The resultant structures is dikaryotic, which ultimately gives rise to basidium. Karyogamy and meiosis takes place in the basidium, producing four basidospores. The basidospores are exogenously produced on the basidium. Basidia. The basidia are arranged in fruiting bodies called basidocarp. Some common members are agaricus mushroom, Astilago smut, and Puccinia rust fungus. Deuteromycetes, commonly known as imperfect fungi, because only the asexual or vegetative phase of this fungi are known. When the sexual forms of these fungi are discovered, they were moved into classes they rightly belong to. It is also possible that the asexual and vegetative stage have been given one name and placed under Deuteromycetes, and the sexual stage another and placed under another class. Later, when the lineage were stabilized, the fungi were correctly identified and moved out of Deuteromycetes. Once perfect sexual stage of members of Deuteromycetes were discovered, they were often moved to Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes. The Deuteromycetes reproduced only by asexual spore known as conidia. The mycelium is septate and branched. Some members are saprophytes or parasites, while a large number of them are decomposers of litter and help in mineral cycling. Some examples are Alternaria, Colectotrichum, and Trichoderma. Kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae include all eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms, commonly called plants. A few members are partially heterotrophic, such as in insectivorous plants or parasites. Bladderwort and Venus flytrap are examples of insectivorous plants, and Cuscuta is a parasite. The plant cells have an eukaryotic structure with prominent chloroplast and cell wall, mainly made of cellulose. We will study the eukaryotic cell structures in details in chapter 8. Plant includes algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperms. Life cycle of plants has two distinct phases: the diploid saprophytic and the haploid gametophytic, that alternate with each other. The length of the haploid and diploid phase and whether these phases are free living or dependent on others vary among different groups in plants. This phenomenon is called alternation of generation. You will study further details of this kingdom in chapter number 3. Kingdom Animalia. The kingdom is characterized by heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms that are multicellular and their cells lack cell walls. They directly or indirectly depend on plants for food. They digest their food in an alternate cavity and store food reserve as glycogen or fat. This mode of nutrition is halozoic. By ingestion of food, they follow a definite growth pattern and grow into adults that have a definite shape and size. Higher form shows elaborate sensory and neuromotor mechanism. Most of them are capable of locomotion. The sexual reproduction is by the copulations of male and female flower, followed by embryological development. Silent features of various phyla are described in chapter 4: virus, viroids, pyron, and lichen. And the particular classification of Whitaker, there is no mention of lichen and some acellular organisms like virus, viroid, and pyron. These are briefly introduced here. All of us who have suffered the ill effect of common cold or flu know what effect viruses can have on us. Even if we do not associate with it with our condition, viruses did not find a place in classification since they are not considered truly living. If we understand living as those organisms that have a cell structure, the viruses are non-living organisms that are characterized by having an inert crystalline structures outside the living cell. Once they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cells to replicate themselves. killing the host. Would you call virus living or non-living? Virus means venom or poisonous fluid. D. Myrit Wonoski, 1892, recognized certain microbes as casual organisms of the mosaic disease of tobacco. These were found to be smaller than bacteria because they passed through the bacterial spore filters. M. W. Beijerinck, 1898, demonstrated that the extracts of the infected plants of tobacco could cause infection in healthy plants, and named the new pathogen virus and called the fluid as contagious vivum fluidum, infectious living fluid. W. M. Stanley, 1935, showed that viruses could be crystallized and crystal consist largely of protein. They are insert outside their specific host cells. Viruses are obligate parasites. In addition to protein, viruses also contain genetic material that could be either RNA or DNA. No virus contains both RNA and DNA. A virus is a nucleoprotein and the genetic material is infectious. In general, viruses that infect plants have single-stranded RNA and viruses that infect animals have either single or double-stranded RNA or double-stranded DNA. Bacterial viruses or bacteriophages viruses that infect the bacteria are usually double-stranded DNA viruses. The protein coat called capsid, made of small subunits called capsomeres, protect the nucleic acid. These capsomeres are arranged in helical or polyhedral geometrical forms. Viruses causes diseases like mumps, smallpox, herpes, and influenza. AIDS in humans is also caused by virus. In plants, the symptoms can be mosaic formation, leaf rolling and curling, yellowing and vein clearing, dwarfing and stunted growth. Viroid. In 1971, T.O. Deinzer discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than viruses and caused potato spindle tuber disease. It was found to be a free RNA. It lacked the protein coat that is found in viruses, hence the name viroid. The RNA of the viroid was of low molecular weight, pyron. In modern medicine, certain infections, neurological diseases were found to be transmitted by an agent consisting of abnormal folded protein. The agent was similar in size to viruses. These agents were called pyrons. The most notable diseases caused by pyrons are obvious spongiform BSE, commonly called mad cow disease in cattle, and its analogous variant Cr-Jakob disease in humans. Lichens. Lichens are symbiotic associations, that is mutually useful association between algae and fungi. The algae components is known as phycobiont and fungal components as mycobiont, which are autotrophic and heterotrophic respectively. Algae prepare food for fungi and fungi provide shelter and absorb minerals, nutrients and water for the parents. So clone is these associations that if one saw a lichen in nature, one would never imagine that they had two different organisms within them. Lichen are very good pollution indicator. They do not grow in polluted area. Summary. Biological classification of plants and animals was first proposed by Aristotle on the basis of simple morphological characters. Linnaeus later classified all living organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. Whitaker proposed and elaborate five-kingdom classification, Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. The main criteria of the five-kingdom classification were cell structures, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproductions, and phylogenetic relationships. In the five kingdom classification, bacteria are included in kingdom Monera. Bacteria are cosmopolitan in distribution. These organisms show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Bacteria may be autotrophic or heterotrophic in their mode of nutrition. Kingdom Protista include all single-celled eukaryotes such as cryophytes, dinoflagellates, eukaryotes, limodes, and protozoans. Protists have defined nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. They reproduce both sexually, asexually, and sexually. Members of kingdom fungi show a great diversity in structures and habitat. Most fungi are saprophytic in their mode of nutrition. They show asexual and sexual reproduction. Poly Phycomycetes, Excomycetes, Bacillomycetes, and Deuteromycetes are the four classic classes under this kingdom. The plantae include all eukaryotic chlorophyll second containing organisms. Algae, bryophyte, rhodophyte, gymnosperms, and angiosperms are included in this group. The life cycle of plants exhibit alternations of generations, gametophytic and sporophytic generation. The heterotrophic eukaryotic multicellular organisms lacking a cell wall are included in the kingdom Animalia. The mode of nutrition of these organisms is halozoic. They reproduce mostly by the sexual mode. Some acellular organisms like viruses and viroids as well as the lichens are not included in the five kingdom systems of classification.